Cursed animals, creatures that bring misfortune and death. In 1984, a raven appeared at a family's home in Scotland, and the next day a fire destroyed their house. Coincidence or a supernatural warning? Since time immemorial, humans have feared certain creatures, not for their claws or fangs, but for something far worse. Their mere presence is a bad omen. Their shadows foretell tragedies. Their eyes seem to see beyond this world. Some say they are just superstitions, that there is nothing to fear. But time and time again, the legends repeat themselves. Testimonies of people who, after seeing these animals, faced a tragic fate. Coincidence? Or is there something more? Something we don't understand? In this video, we will explore these cursed animals, those that, according to history and folklore, have brought misfortune and death. From the most well-known to the most terrifying. And I warn you, some of these dark omens still happen today. And if you ever come across the last one on this list, you'd better start praying. Number 7. We begin this list with an animal that at first glance seems harmless, but its mere presence has been considered a bad omen for centuries. Its piercing eyes seem to see beyond this world. Its call in the darkness of the night has sent shivers down the spines of entire generations. We are talking about the owl, a creature that many cultures have directly linked to death. Since ancient times, the owl has been considered a harbinger of tragedies. In Mexico and many parts of Latin America, it is said that when an owl sings near a house, it means someone inside will soon die. In Mayan culture, these animals were seen as emissaries of the underworld, guardians of dark secrets. But this belief is not exclusive to America. In medieval Europe, owls were associated with witchcraft. It was believed that witches could transform into owls to spy on their enemies, and that if one of these appeared at your window, it meant something terrible was about to happen. Although many believe these are mere superstitions, there are documented cases that have reinforced the fear of these creatures. In Scotland, a family reported hearing the insistent call of an owl for several nights, until a fire completely consumed their home. In Italy, soldiers of World War II recounted that before an ambush, it was common to hear the echo of an owl in the distance, as if announcing the death that was to come. Could it be that the owl is just a nocturnal animal that by chance appears at moments of tragedy? Or is there something more, something we have yet to understand? What is certain is that its reputation as a messenger of death remains intact to this day. If you ever hear its call near your window, perhaps it's best not to ignore it. Number 6. They say that when an owl sings near your house, death is lurking. But it's not the only animal wrapped in macabre superstitions. There is another creature, closer, more common, but just as feared. One that glides through the darkness with stealthy steps. One that for centuries has been linked to witchcraft, curses, and death. Taking the number 6 spot is the dreaded black cat. Since the Middle Ages, black cats have been seen as omens of misfortune. It was said that witches could transform into them to move among humans undetected. In many villages across Europe, if one of these cats crossed your path, it was better to turn around, or brace yourself for impending tragedy. But this superstition didn't stay in the past. In countries like Italy and Spain, many people still avoid crossing paths with a black cat, believing it brings bad luck. In the United States, even today, animal shelters report that black cats are the last to be adopted, as if they were still marked by an ancient curse. Throughout history, unsettling cases have reinforced these felines' dark reputation. In 1692, during the Salem witch trials, several of the accused women owned black cats, and it was said that these cats mysteriously disappeared just before their owners were sentenced to the gallows. Could black cats simply be victims of unfair superstitions? Or is there something more behind their dark reputation? The truth is that, even today, they remain symbols of the unknown, of the occult, of the forbidden. And if you ever see a black cat staring at you in the night, maybe it's not just an ordinary animal. But if you think black cats are the only animals linked to death, wait until you see the next one on our list. A creature many have seen before losing a loved one. A silent visitor that appears when death is near. Number 5. They say that if a black cat crosses your path, misfortune is near. But there is a being even quieter, more unsettling. It has no fangs or claws. It does not attack or defend itself. It simply appears. And when it does, someone dies. The black moth, also known as the death butterfly, has sown fear for centuries and continues to do so today. In many cultures, the appearance of a black moth inside a house is a harbinger of death. In Mexico and Central America, it is known as the death butterfly, and it is said that when it appears, someone in the family is doomed. In Venezuela, they call it the evil butterfly, and seeing one inside your home means misfortune will soon knock at your door. But this superstition is not limited to Latin America. In some African tribes, black moths are seen as spirits trapped between the world of the living and the dead. In the Philippines, they are believed to be the souls of the departed, returning to warn their loved ones of an impending tragedy. Although some believe it is just another insect, there are chilling stories that have reinforced its feared reputation. In 2009, in a small town in Mexico, a family found a black moth perched on their doorframe. The next day, a family member died unexpectedly. The most unsettling part? As they prepared the funeral, another moth appeared over the coffin. Similar cases have been reported in multiple countries. People who saw a black moth perched on their window, only to receive, hours later, the news of a relative's death. In some hospitals, doctors and nurses have recounted that these creatures appear in rooms where patients are about to die, as if they were waiting for something. Why do so many cultures in different corners of the world see the black moth as an omen of doom? Is it merely an insect that has fallen victim to superstition? Or is it truly connected to death in ways we have yet to understand? Number 4. Black moths foretell death, but the next animal on our list seems to accompany it, lurking in the shadow of every tragedy, as if waiting. Its dark silhouette has become a symbol of misfortune. Its gaze seems to pierce the soul, and its call is a funeral echo that has terrified humanity for centuries. The next on our list is the raven, the sentinel of death. Since ancient times, ravens have been seen as guardians of the afterlife. Their presence on battlefields, cemeteries, and places of tragedy turned them into symbols of death itself. In Norse mythology, they were Odin's eyes, watching over the fate of men. In the Middle Ages, their arrival was believed to herald plagues, wars, and famine. In Japan, the appearance of ravens in temples is seen as a sign of imminent misfortune. In some North American tribes, it is said that ravens carry the souls of the dead to the other world, but only those souls with unfinished business. Some believe they are just ordinary birds, but there are unsettling accounts that suggest otherwise. During the Great Plague of London in 1665, ravens were seen gathering in large flocks over houses where the sick lay dying. On the battlefields of World War I and II, soldiers reported that ravens arrived before the battles even began, as if they could predict the slaughter. Are ravens merely birds, or true sentinels of death? Can they see what we cannot? Perhaps the next time a raven caws at your window, it won't be just a coincidence. Number 3. Ravens watch over death, but the animal in the third spot on our list is even older, more cunning, and more feared. Its mere presence has sown terror in humanity since time immemorial. It hides in the shadows, invisible until it is too late. In history, religion, and myth, it has always represented the same: deception, danger, and death. Taking the third position on this list is the snake. Since the dawn of humanity, the snake has been seen as a being of dual nature, capable of slipping between good and evil. In the Bible, it was the agent of perdition, the one that whispered the first betrayal into the ears of humankind. In Greek mythology, it was a symbol of temptation and divine punishment. In the folklore of many cultures, it is the very representation of the devil. But it is not just a symbol. In real life, its venom has claimed countless victims. Bite can kill in minutes, creatures that have been viewed as treacherous, unpredictable, and deadly. Snakes have been the protagonists of terrifying tales throughout history. In ancient Rome, it was said that emperors who died betrayed had dreamt of snakes before their assassination. In India, it is still believed that if a snake enters your home, it is a bad omen, a sign that someone close to you will betray you. In the United States, there are multiple reports of people being bitten by snakes at the worst possible moment. Just before an accident, a sudden illness, or even before being betrayed by someone they trusted. Snakes lurk in the shadows, silent, lethal. But the real question is, Are they simply animals following their instincts? Or are they harbingers of something darker? Perhaps when you see a snake cross your path, it is not just a warning of physical danger, but a sign that someone is about to betray you. Number 2. Snakes lurk in silence. But the next animal on our list doesn't need to hide. It doesn't move through the darkness or slither through the grass. It's everywhere. It lives among us. It watches from the sewers, hides in the corners of our homes, and worst of all, it has brought with it the greatest tragedy humanity has ever known. Rats, carriers of disease, invaders of cities, and responsible for millions of deaths throughout history. They take the second spot on our list. For centuries, rats have been seen as omens of misfortune, signs of disease and despair. But their reputation is not just a myth. In the 14th century, these small creatures carried with them the greatest health disaster in human history, the Black Death. An estimated 200 million people died in just 5 years. The streets of cities were left deserted, corpses piled up on the corners. And among them, there were always rats, moving through the remains of civilization, as if they had witnessed our downfall, or as if they were the cause of it. But the Black Death was not the only disaster linked to rats. For centuries, their presence has been believed to be a warning of imminent tragedy. On ships, sailors used to say that if the rats abandoned the vessel, it meant the ship would soon sink. In some cultures, seeing a rat in the house is considered an omen of impending death. In 2011 in Japan, a group of scientists recorded a strange phenomenon. Days before the devastating earthquake and tsunami, rats began emerging en masse from the sewers, fleeing the cities. Was it just animal instinct? Or did they know something terrible was about to happen? Some believe that rats don't just announce tragedies, they attract them, as if their presence was tied to death, to chaos, to the end of everything. Rats have accompanied humanity since its beginnings, and in every great tragedy they have been there, lurking, waiting, multiplying in the shadow of our despair. Are they merely survivors of our world? Or are they connected to forces we have yet to understand? Number 1. So far, we have gone through a list of creatures feared for their connection to death. From owls and their cursed song to the rats that brought the plague. From black cats condemned by superstition to crows that have watched over battlefields for centuries. But what animal could bring more misfortune and death than all we've seen? There are stories of shadows that walk among us, spectral beasts that do not hunt or kill. They simply appear. And when they do, tragedy is inevitable. The last on our list is the most feared of all, the phantom black dog, the harbinger of death. For centuries, witnesses around the world have reported encounters with enormous black dogs with glowing eyes. They are not ordinary animals. They are spectral creatures, entities that appear in times of misfortune. In England, it is known as the Black Shuck, a demonic dog said to stalk travelers on stormy nights. In Latin America, some call it El Cadejo, a dark spirit that follows the condemned to their final fate. But the most terrifying thing about these dogs is not their appearance, but what their presence means. It is said that if you see one, your fate is already sealed. They do not attack, they do not chase, they simply watch. And when they vanish, death follows. Throughout history, there are accounts that seem to confirm this curse. In the year 1577, in Bungay, England, witnesses claimed to have seen a massive black dog storm into a church. Minutes later, lightning struck the temple, killing several people. The dog disappeared into the storm, but its curse remained. What are the black dogs really? Ghosts? Demonic entities? What is certain is that their legend lives on, and those unfortunate enough to see one never lived long enough to tell the tale.